I think the most I can do is just do an honest job and be on the ground permanently.
And how do you do that?
I am here. I'm here and I'm trying to cover what is important from my point of view. And at the very moment, I think it's super important to show how critical the situation actually is for the whole country.
Hello, and welcome back to the Covering Ukraine podcast. I'm Oksana Mamchenkova, your host and the Kyiv-based coordinator for the Europe-Ukraine desk. Today is our 15th episode, and we'll be focusing on one of the past Kyiv Media Hub events, which took place in Kyiv on the 14th of December 2023. This gathering brought together Ukrainian and EU journalists to share their experience and discuss the challenges of covering the war against Ukraine. As the full-scale war in Ukraine approaches its third year, media coverage has been remarkable in many ways. From a historic perspective, few wars have been covered as widely or in such detail. More importantly, this media attention plays a critical role in Ukraine's resistance to Russian aggression. The support of the Western partners largely depends on what is known about the situation both at the front line and in civilian life. However, global interest in the war against Ukraine has been rising and falling, spiking when tragic events like the shelling of cities or hospitals, and then fading into dry statistics for a period. This requires the media to adapt. How have editorial priorities changed? What can journalists from the EU and Ukraine do to keep readers, audience, and listeners focused on the war? And how is the war portrayed in Italy, the United Kingdom, and Germany? These were some of the key topics explored by our panel of speakers. Davide Maria De Luca, an Italian journalist covering Ukraine for Domani, Il Post, and other media. Azad Safarov, a producer for the British TV channel Sky News. And Barth, a journalist from the German public broadcaster ARD. Moderating the discussion was Serhiy Stukanov, editor Ukrainian radio, which is part of the Ukrainian public broadcaster.
So let maybe start from Germany. This country is the closest to us from geography point of view, in terms of geography, but also Germany, I would say, made great paradigm shift in perception of Russia and perception of Ukraine during the last year and a half. So I wonder, Rebecca, how do German media reflect the war in Ukraine? How did it go before Russian full-scale invasion? What has been changed, and what maybe are the main trends at the end of 2023 in general in German media and in particular on your public broadcaster?
Well, the war against Ukraine actually created a huge process within the German public, but also I think among politicians. I remember the winter before the full-scale invasion where many either journalists or public figures were publicly afraid, is there going to be a war in Europe? While we as correspondents on the ground were actually reporting about the war in Europe since 2014, which must have been very frustrating for all the correspondents we had on the ground, for all the people that have been covering this war since 2014. Last year, after the full-scale invasion, I think it was a big shock to the German society, and then it created a huge learning process. So everyone had to re-evaluate their values, their understanding of history, and had to learn a lot about this country. They did, and I think this is reflected in also political decisions which have been taken or are being taken now. And now I think we're coming to a phase where we have to be more focused on political analysis, where it's more important all these political procedures which are starting now, EU accession, getting closer into NATO. How does this also work on a technical level? Also more people are more interested in inner political problems maybe in Ukraine. So it got away from the coverage of the war, of human rights abuses, of the suffering of civilians to, let's say, more analytical coverage.
When it comes to the Italian media, their coverage of Russia's war against Ukraine has gone through a transformation too. Here's how Italian journalist Davide Maria De Luca, who writes for the daily Domani, explains this change.
Italy is a country that has not been growing for a long period of time. It's a country in which there is a lot of skepticism about the government, whichever government, left, right, center. And I think that when the mainstream media pushes a narrative, there is a good chunk of the Italian public opinion that push against that narrative, not because they have like some deep-seated belief, but just because this is a narrative that is pushed by the mainstream media. And I think that the solution is just good quality journalism, like try to find answers to the question that people has and try not to hide the facts and try to speak about what's really going on and without trying to skip the question and sometimes also uncomfortable question that these kind of people, these skeptic people, these people that don't believe in the official narration asks.
And about the quality journalism, in our community of journalists, we often discuss about the standards of journalism. And in particular, it means two-sided view. It means balanced information. So I wonder, how do British media, or maybe in particular your Sky News, managed to balance the information and at the same time not to give the floor for aggressor and let me say not to equalize aggressor and its victim, I mean Russia and Ukraine.
This is Azad Safarov, a producer for Sky News in Ukraine.
I just want to emphasize that I am the only one here who have Ukrainian citizenship. So I'm Ukrainian, like I have been living and working in Ukraine for all my life. But originally I was born not in Britain, but in Azerbaijan. And if I can tell about British media, I would say that from the beginning of the war, there were maybe like 6-7 different TV channels present in Great Britain in Ukraine, like ITV, Channel 4, Sky News, BBC. And I never saw anything bad in their news, like against Ukraine, because they clearly saw who is the evil here, who started this war, who is terrorizing people in Ukraine, and in all their reports, in all their documentaries, and they have been doing not only reports and stories, but also documentaries, which brought a lot of attention to what's happened in Bucha, what's happened in Izium. So I would say that, I do understand about balance, but about two sides, but it's difficult to go in on this route when you're talking about Russia, who's using all the time propaganda and lie, everywhere. So from what I have seen, working with the British channels like Sky News, they're always trying to be objective, but they definitely know who is right and who is not. Like mostly all of them were supporting Ukraine, were supporting people here. They were telling me what's going on in Britain, how the media reacting on the war in Ukraine, how the people reacting in the war in Ukraine. And, I was getting so many messages from British people asking me whether there is some family who needs help, whom I can suggest to come to Britain and stay there. So the attention was very, very high. In the beginning of the war, there were 7 or 8 Sky News teams in Ukraine. It's a lot. And but till now, there's less, of course, channels, also because of the war in Israel. A lot of attention moved there. But for the last year and a half, I would say that the attention of the British media to Ukraine was really high, and it was always like true information in their news.
Yeah, really, we know that Russian full-scale invasion has been lasting for almost 2 years, and it's quite natural maybe that it's getting harder and harder to keep the attention of audience. So my question, Rebecca, is in your opinion, what and how journalists and media should do, write, show, or maybe in some other way express their opinion in order to maintain this focus on war in Ukraine? Because really we have a lot of other points in our map, like Gaza, which attract the attention.
Well, I think we're journalists, not activists. We can't influence what kind of shows people are turning on, what kind of stories they like to read. I think it's natural that attention gets lower from time to time because also the stories start to repeat themselves after some time. But I think what Well, media should probably do what we did, actually, as a channel. What we did, we opened a foreign office here. We have 4 correspondents on the ground, 2 TV correspondents and 2 radio correspondents. We're the biggest public broadcast channel in Germany, and we will cover whatever will happen from the ground permanently. And I think this is the best answer that you can give to the major, also geopolitical changes we are witnessing right now. And then you just got to do a good job, do honest reporting, as you said, also critical reporting. And the audience in our home countries, they should have the right to choose what they want to see and what they want to read. It's a free country. Like, I can't influence it. I think the most I can do is just do an honest job and be on the ground permanently.
And how do you do that?
I'm here and I'm trying to cover what is important from my point of view. I'm working on the radio, which is a lot of freedom. So I do not have to fight for space in a major news show in the evening, like unfortunately my TV colleagues need to do. I can choose whatever topic I want to do, but then also my colleagues in Germany can choose because it's a network, I'm working for dozens of radio channels, and they can choose. Do they want to publish my report? Do they want to have a live talk? And I'm trying also to be in exchange with them to understand, okay, what is their perspective? Like, what kind of questions are they asking? But I'm also trying to do critical reporting and trying also to show how the society lives with this war, how the society changes. And at the very moment, I think it's super important to show how critical the situation actually is for the whole country. Like, it's really major decisions, especially decisions in this week, which decide maybe, the future of this country. And I think it's our job to point out how important these developments are and what consequences they might have.
Rebecca emphasized that she is here, and this is very good. So I have a follow-up question, because at least before the Russian full-scale invasion, many foreign medias had their correspondents, journalists in Moscow, but not in Ukraine. And actually, the Moscow was a center from which they covered all the Eastern Europe. Has this changed in Italy, for instance? How do Italian media react on this situation? Do they have journalists in Moscow, in Russia, or maybe they send them to Ukraine rather?
Davide Maria De Luca answers.
Well, first of all, I completely agree with Rebecca. And I have to say, the attention for Ukraine is decreasing, but it does not disappear. And at least for me, for what I'm seeing on the Italian media, it constantly goes up and down. And I think, for example, now we are in a moment with the discussion in the United States, the summit in Brussels about the European aid for the next 3-4 years. I think now the attention is rebounding, and I'm very happy to see that, because I think that still people understand that this is a very important conflict. It's a conflict which is very near to them and very near to their interests, and also geographically. And so I don't think that the interest is completely disappearing, and I'm pretty optimistic about that. And talking about correspondence, I think that the Italian media are generally pretty poor compared to the media in the other big European country. Italy is not a country of readers. It's not a country of people very interested in news. It's a very provincial old country. And I think that there are still correspondents in Moscow. I think that the national television are still a bureau in Moscow. And but there was a switch after the full-scale invasion, and especially for the first 6 months in Ukraine, I think that here in Ukraine there were probably 50, 60, 70 Italian journalists, and still all the major newspapers have people here in Ukraine constantly doing shift, and all the major television, they have someone here from time to time. So there was this switch, of course, but still I think that the major media outlet in Italy, they don't have completely abandoned Russia.
So about actually the coverage of war in Ukraine by British media, because unfortunately we should say that maybe war somehow turned into routine for citizens, for Europeans, because some Russian missiles attacks, they are not as big news as it was a year and a half. So maybe we can even say about tiredness or even fatigue. Do you feel this in British society, and how do you think media can maintain the attention?
Azad Safarov says,
I can't say about like British audience because I'm not there, but I would agree with Rebecca that actually it's not the task of the media to keep attention. It's task of the country and the authority and a special Minister of Defense to keep this attention, because we know that in the beginning of the war, for example, there were absolutely no support from other countries, but after what Ukrainian and foreign journalists showed what happened in Bucha, everything changed a lot. So what we need now, we need to give all the possibilities for foreign journalists, for Ukrainian journalists to do their job, especially on the front line. The access there should be much, much easier. Nobody is going to come to Ukraine and sit in the hotels and wait for weeks to get access to some place. It's unbelievable. So what should we do? It's do our best from the Minister of Defense, from the Office of President, so that journalists can go and make the reports. Believe me, people, I think the audience, as a journalist who has been working more than 20 years, I would say that the audience doesn't need all the time shooting or bombing, or they need stories. They need human stories, and we can go there and find these stories. And the main task for Ukrainian authority is to give possibilities to find the stories. Journalists know their job. They know how to bring attention to their audience. They know their audience. They know that they can make interesting reports. And we should not afraid of the showing that we are, we lack of equipment or we lack of something, we should show transparency. Because for us, important that a journalist stay in Ukraine. They don't go to Russian side to make stories from that side, I'm talking now as a Ukrainian citizen, not as a Sky News producer.
Davide, I want to know about your experience of working in Ukraine and because you are traveling, you was in South and in East as well. What is your experience?
It's widely different. Talking with people near the front line or not the front line, I encountered the most friendly people I ever met. It was extremely easy to talk with them. They were very happy to have journalists still wanting to tell their story. But still, the bureaucracy is a big problem. Access could be a real big problem. But I think that what we are saying, there's no contradiction, because I think that it depends what you compare this war to, because you don't have reporting directly from the bridgehead on the other side of the Dnipro, but we had journalists during the siege of Fallujah that were not completely, there was not even nobody embedded, I think. It was just off limits in Fallujah. Or in Turkey, do we have journalists reporting from the war that Turkey has been fighting against the Kurds? Or from Nagorno-Karabakh, we have people on the first line talking with militaries, the Azerbaijani military. No, I think it's true. Ukraine is a very accessible country compared to many other. But still, it's true that if the government wants that we keep telling this story, we need even more access than that. Even more, and it's uncomfortable for militaries because they don't trust journalists. They fear there is just bureaucratic inertia, but also there is the fear that, the journalists are going to report the state of this unit, which is not very bad. They are going to report the morale of this other unit, which is not super high. And maybe they are afraid about that. But since Ukraine is fighting this war in a very transparent and democratic way, it's not fighting this war like Russia, it's not fighting this war like an autocratic country, it needs these kinds of transparency. For every good story, it needs also a not so good story, because this is the only way to portray a realistic country, a country that people can believe into. And if you just say good things about what's going on here, it's easier for people not to trust your reporting because they don't believe it. Because they say, you're saying the same things that Russia is saying about their army, so I have to trust you. That's the problem I have with my Italian readership, the Italians that I described before. Not people that have deeply pro-Russian sentiment, but they just don't believe anybody. And so to be believed, I have to tell them a story which is more nuanced and more credible.
I wonder, what does it depend on? I mean, the bureaucracy, or maybe the will of some personalities who are responsible for the access in some regions. Rebecca, what do you think?
I think it's both. Yeah. So I have had different experience with different press officers. Some are very good, very helpful, very professional. Others are rather unexperienced guys. They have no idea of what is journalism, what does it need. But on the other hand, it's transparency, what you said. There are some rules set up, and then nobody knows, who do I need to talk to? Why does it work here the way it's working on a different spot, different unit, different person is working differently? And who's actually the person that I need to talk to? Like everyone is pointing fingers at each other. So this is a problem. You just do not understand. And sure, Ukraine could do better in these cases.
What is your opinion, Azad?
I agree that actually working with the soldiers or press officers sometimes much easier on the ground. You know, when you come there, they treat you much better when if you go from above to get the permission. You know, I mean, there's so many press centers. So the main one is always some pain, headache, but whenever you come to the soldiers, we mostly had really good talk, really good filming. And you know, my friend, and also colleague from Sky News, Artem Lysik, sitting here. And sometimes we try just to go directly to those whom we know, who trust us, without any level of negotiation with the commander. It was the same in Kherson when the Kherson was liberated on the 11th of November. And all of the journalists who were there in Mykolaiv, they were all begging for the access. They were telling that we need to be there just to show that Russian propaganda lies, that people will meet Ukrainian soldiers normally without any fear. And we were told, no, it's not possible. No, never, you're not going there. Without any explanation why they're doing this. So what all journalists started to make their own way there. And we made our own way also. It was 6 o'clock in the morning when we were driving there with one of the colonels. And we drove inside. We filmed everything. Then all the journalists will come in. I think there were more than 50 journalists. And then in 1 hour, I will get a message from the press officers that we are going to ban you. We are going to punish you. I said, it's your job. And they did indeed. In the end of the day, we showed everywhere in all the world that Ukrainian soldiers were met with hugs, with kisses. And it was so true. It was so natural, you know, that it just demolished all the Russian propaganda. But in the end, they took our accreditations, and there were a lot of talks, a lot of bureaucracy, and they returned to us in 1 week. But we lost 1 week. We couldn't do anything for 1 week. We just sat in the hotel and waiting for this.
Rebecca Barth.
Well, I think transparency would be great. So if you set up rules, make them understandable and make them clear, and stop pressuring people, like stripping of accreditation. If they do not really, like, for example, just violate some basic rules and endanger people, why would you do that? Because the Kherson example is actually quite good, because what happened in our network and our reporting when you guys were pressured is that our bosses got afraid in Germany and said, like, oh, don't do it. Like, please follow the rules, because otherwise they will shut down our whole team here. So, you know, when they pressure another team from Sky News, it has wide effects to other journalists who try to cover this. And this is, of course, a huge issue. And I hope that those responsible understand that there's no reason for it other than security.
Azad, do you want to add a few words?
Like, there are so many solutions which can be made, but I think this is a decision from our authority. Like, we can't go and make for them for their job. Yeah, we came with initiative. I am in Ukraine. I am in one of the Ukrainian journalist movement, and we had so many talks already with our authorities explaining and showing why this is good, this is bad, why this red zone, yellow zone, and nobody understands where is yellow zone, the red zone. Why yesterday it was red zone, today is yellow zone. And again, if you step here, it's already red zone. It is so fun. It's not normal.
Right. It depends on the front line.
No, it's not depend, because here is no map. No. It doesn't change because of the front line. It's for example, not recently, a few months ago, they said that Kherson is completely yellow zone and you can't go there without press officer. And we said, okay, if I have relatives there, can I call him? So it's strange. So I do agree that there is a lack of professionalism, but I would also say that a lot of journalists has been already drafted to the army and they was appointed as a press officers, and the situation slowly changing. But anyway, it's changing in the maybe middle level or lower level. It should change from above. The mentality of acknowledging the journalist's work, why it's important for Ukraine, why it's important for us to be on the top news everywhere. It's really important.
Davide, you moved to Ukraine a few months ago. What did motivate you to come here and to report from here?
I don't want to sound too magniloquent, but I think this is the war of our generation, all us that born in the 80s, in the 90s. And I think this is, for us European, it's going to be a huge historic event. Of course, for Ukraine, it's the most important event, like in probably since the independence, if maybe even before. But it's going to be huge for all the rest of Europe. And I think it's going to have like a huge social and political impact and ramification. And surely, I think that in Europe, Ukraine now is the place to be, for sure, if you want to see history moving in real time.
Okay. Thank you very much. And to summarize our discussion, of course, maybe medias are not perfect in Ukraine as well. We also criticize them. So my last question for all of you, what do you think Italian, British and German media should do better in order to cover this topic?
Davide Maria De Luca answers.
And for my country, it's pretty simple. They need more boots on the ground here in Ukraine. More people, they have people. I'm really happy about it. They still have people, but they need probably more. They need to invest more resources. It's very banal, but I think that's what's needed.
Azad Safarov says,
like in Ukraine, we know this definition, the sofa experts, like the people who sit at home and can expertise everything. So I definitely not expert in advising how British media should work. I was talking more about Ukraine because I have been living here more than for 20 years and I understood the mentality and the mindset of the authority. Regarding like British media, I think they are doing a lot for showing what's going on in Ukraine. It's real, they have done a lot, they are doing a lot, and I hope they will again do the same level in Ukraine. And I would also say that thanks to, like, I'm grateful to Ukrainian journalists. They do their job, they're cool, but I know a lot of them in Ukraine. I will tell them thank you personally. But I would like to share this, a lot of thank to foreign media at all, like Italian, German, all of them, because they really take a lot of risk to come here, a lot of like being in dangerous position to come here, to work on the front line, to put their like life in danger and to sometimes quarrel with their relatives because who don't want to let them go to here, you know. Because of them, a lot of things have been shown to the world and a lot of support was got by Ukraine because of their journalist work. So I'm just thankful for what they're doing.
Rebecca Barth answers.
Well, I think in general speaking about the German coverage from all the outlets that we're having, that the colleagues have done an amazing job. The major newspapers or TV channels, they do have their people on the ground. And if it's about what can we do better, yes, you can always have more people, more time, more resources, more, sure. But from a German perspective, I think if we keep on going as we have been doing the past at least 2 years, and then just don't leave, maybe. Don't leave when the attention goes away.
So thank you for your job and thank you for sharing your experience with us this evening and good luck. And I think, dear colleagues, that this evening is really great for us and thank you very much. And again, thank to n-ost organization and Oksana Mamchenkova for this meeting.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Covering Ukraine. I'm Oksana Mamchenkova, your host and the Kyiv-based coordinator for the Europe-Ukraine desk. This episode was edited, sound designed, and mixed by Lyuba Gook. Please note that the views expressed by our guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of the media organizations they represent, nor n-ost, nor the European Commission who funded this project. Covering Ukraine is part of the Europe-Ukraine desk, a program designed to build connections between journalists from the EU and Ukraine. If you'd like to reach us, you can email us to eud.n-ost.org. And if you enjoyed this episode, maybe you can consider sharing it with a friend. We'll be back with more soon. Take care.